After 5 years of waiting, GoPro finally dropped the Max 2. But in a world where Insta360 has owned 360 cameras for years, is GoPro already too late? Now, I've been using GoPro since the Hero 2. This entire channel was built on them. I was even sponsored by GoPro for a while. And it was, in fact, the delay of this camera that was the primary reason why I switched to Insta360. So yeah, I've been anxiously awaiting this camera. And no, I have no animosity or ill will against GoPro. They've always done right by me. So the question is simple. Has GoPro finally built a camera that can take back the crown? Or is the Max 2 just another reminder of what could have been? Now, the GoPro Max 2 keeps the familiar dual lens 360 layout, but finally modernizes almost every part of it. GoPro says everything around the sensor has been upgraded, processing, lens, and stabilization have all been rebuilt to deliver better image quality, wider dynamic range, and improved low light performance. It shoots 5.7K 360 video up to 60 frames per second and single lens 4K when you want a standard shot as well. But what we're interested in is 8K up to 30 frames, but today we're shooting 8K at 24 frames because that's what I always do. Now, there's a 1.82-inch touchscreen that's brighter and faster to respond than the old one, and the new interface matches GoPro's Hero models. Audio sees a major redesign too. The Max 2 has 6 microphones that capture immersive 360 spatial audio with improved wind rejection and directional sound when you're speaking into the camera. It's waterproof to 16 feet without a case, and it uses the same fold-out mounting fingers as well as a thread mount that supports all the other accessories like the Volta grip, external mics, the selfie sticks, and all that other stuff. But with a retail price of about $50 different from the king of 360 cameras, the Insta360 X5, $499 and $549 respectively, and not to get sidetracked, as I'm recording this, the X5 is on sale for $499, I feel like we need to compare these pretty directly. Both cameras are built around dual sensors, but this is where the differences start to matter. While the Max 2 is claiming true 8K, which would be 3840 by 3840 lines of resolution, compares to the X5's 3840 by 2160 or whatever it is, that doesn't tell the whole story. The Max 2 keeps the same sensor size as the original Max, a 1/2.3-inch sensor, or in plain English, about 1/2 inch. Meanwhile, the X5 uses a larger 1/1.28-inch sensor, or roughly a 1-inch sensor. That's about twice as big as the Max 2, or exactly 1.8 times bigger if precision matters. And in my humble opinion, doing this for a living, a bigger sensor is more important than resolution or megapixels. A bigger sensor means better dynamic range, cleaner shadows, and less noise, especially in low light or during sunrise and sunset rides. Basically, each pixel is bigger so it can gather more light, and there's less electrical noise and heat per pixel, so you just end up with a cleaner image. Now, you know how some dash cams claim to shoot in 4K, but the footage looks insanely bad? That's because they're using an itty-bitty sensor and trying to cram a ton of information onto it. Now, battery life also leans in favor of the X5. The Max 2 uses a 1960 milliamp hour Enduro battery. It's a bit larger than the first Max, but still smaller than the X5's 2400 milliamp battery pack. In the real world, with my testing, that translates to roughly an hour on the GoPro versus about 90 minutes on the X5. Now, it's October, so I haven't seen my Max 2 shut down for overheating, but other reviewers have. And the reason why GoPros run so hot is basically because GoPro pushes higher data rates and heavier stabilization processing while using the higher H.265 compression algorithm, which reduces file size but requires more processing. More processing means more heat. And incidentally, if given the choice, I almost always favor H.264 because while the file size may be larger, the lower compression means they're far easier to work with in the edit, stressing your editing computer much less. Now, GoPro has stuck a heat sink on the front to help combat that, but that comes with the added benefit of being really good at catching bugs. So while GoPro has definitely improved processing, stabilization, and usability, the hard numbers still favor the X5 when it comes to raw endurance and sensor performance. And at almost the same price point, that's going to be hard for riders to ignore. Now, in the real world, both cameras have removable lenses, and if I'm being honest, the Max 2 lenses are much faster and easier to swap out. That's one of the things that really killed the DJI Osmo 360 camera. These fisheye lenses are insanely crazy easy to damage. So you almost have to expect you're gonna have to replace them at some point in time. Now, brass tacks, when it comes to picture quality, I think both do a fine enough job in daylight. A lot of this comes down to taste, and ultimately I had a hard time spotting any meaningful difference in image quality. But where the Max 2 and the DJI 360 also really suffered is audio quality. This is the X5. And this is the Max 2. And then the other minor criticism I have of the GoPro is the red record light is really small and hard to spot. On these cameras, I always mount them so the screen's on the backside, not facing the wind to protect it from potential debris. And the X5 has a great big red LED to show me that it's recording. The GoPro's really small and hard to spot. And then finally, the screen and menus on the GoPro is kind of frustrating. It's hard to navigate. The lens is in the way, so you bump the lens when you're trying to scroll through the menus, and it results in a lot of accidental menu changes. And in my case, more than once, the Max 2 defaulted to 360 photo mode instead of 360 video. And in my world, that mistake can get expensive fast, because who needs a 360 photo when you thought you were filming an entire ride? However, one of the most underrated upgrades on the GoPro Max 2 is the new record button. I mean, this sounds trivial, but for riders, this is huge. With gloves on, most action camera buttons feel like tapping on wet cardboard. You're never quite sure if you hit the button or if you didn't. And I've missed so many great shots because I thought I hit record with gloves on and I didn't. And I've also inadvertently filled SD cards and drained batteries, recording the most boring roads in the world when I thought I'd stopped recording. Now, GoPro finally fixed that. The Max 2's shutter button is this big raised thing. It has a mechanical solid click. You can feel it through thick gloves. You can find it really fast. It gives proper tactile feedback, the kind you can trust when the camera's mounted in some weird spot where you can't see it and you're just reaching down and hitting the button. It's the first action camera of any kind I've used where I don't have to double check the screen to confirm it's recording. One firm press, a satisfying click, and you know it's rolling. So for riders, that's a small change that makes a massive difference, and I can't tell you how big of a deal this is. Now, when it comes to software, GoPro's desktop app isn't especially intuitive. It works, but it feels like a collection of menus that never quite flow together. Simple things like setting keyframes, finding where your media imported to, having to constantly reset the horizon button, and the way the scroll system works, it takes a few extra clicks, but I'm willing to forgive that because whichever platform you use the most eventually becomes second nature. Insta's mobile app is still the best overall. It's clean and fast and packed with genuinely useful AI tools for reframing, color correction, and even auto-editing short clips. But I almost never use those tools because all of my footage ends up in long-form videos like this. Unfortunately, while GoPro also has an Adobe Premiere Reframe plugin, you first have to open all the files into their desktop app, then batch export them into flat MP4 files with 360 data before you can even work with the files directly in Adobe. Or you have to do all the keyframing and manipulation in the GoPro player and then export them into Premiere, which adds all these unnecessary extra steps, more encoding, recoding, and encoding again, and you can't make little adjustments on the fly. Now, this probably doesn't affect you, but it affects anyone who wants to use these files in a more professional environment. And frankly, it is idiotic to have to go through all this hassle and waste all this time in processing, transcoding all your files before you can do anything with them. So, if you create any kind of content for any audience or hope to, my advice is to stay away from both the DJI and the GoPro 360 cameras. You just lose hours upon hours dicking with the footage before you can even get to work. So we now have 360 cameras to choose from. All three of them live in the same price brackets. I think value really matters here. And if I'm ranking them from 1 to 3rd, the GoPro Max 2 comes in second. I actually like it a lot more than the DJI Osmo 360. The Max 2 has replaceable lens covers, they come right off, solid image quality, and easily the best button of any action camera I've used. You can feel it through your gloves. But the audio still isn't great, and then there's that small sensor size. DJI's desktop app is better, but Adobe Reframe plugin was just a nightmare. I mean, my whole experience with the DJI Osmo really put a bad taste in my mouth. And that leaves the Insta360. And dollar for dollar, I still think the X5 is still the better camera. The sensor's twice the size, the battery lasts longer, their software just works on both desktop and mobile. So look, all three of these cameras are vying for flagship status with flagship pricing. But if I were to compare them, the Max 2 is comparable to the last generation Insta360 X4, which is currently on sale for $425. The DJI is comparable to the X3, which is currently on sale for $300. And if these cameras were priced closer to those numbers, my opinion would shift more in their favor because they'd be a really good option for a lot of riders, and I'd be the first to recommend them if they were priced where they perform. But at flagship pricing, almost as good isn't good enough. And I know, this is gonna look and feel and sound like an advertisement, but I promise you that's not my intention. Yes, I am sponsored by Insta360, but they specifically asked me to be brutally honest. And look, my first responsibility is to you. Without you, there wouldn't be sponsors, there wouldn't be a channel, there wouldn't be a reason to do any of this. So my goal is pretty simple. I just want to tell you the truth so you can decide which camera actually deserves your money. I mean, these things are not cheap. It's a big investment, and I take that seriously. Now, I have links to all three cameras in the description. The Insta360 links are affiliate links. They cost you nothing extra, but I do get a few dollars kickback, and you're guaranteed to always get the best price when you use my links. So if you're curious, you can also go check out my DJI Osmo review right here. But in the meantime, thank you so much for watching. Ride on and ride well.